few questions. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Marty Eisenberg! It feels like only yesterday we were sitting here.
Just like yesterday.
Right, okay, and shall we start with the little treat?
We can, if that's where you want to start.
Yeah. Do you want to give a brief
Yeah, let me give it was said once by a wise man that the seeds of the future lie buried in the past. Yesterday we looked at the future. So today we're going to give you a little treat from the past, which we alluded to in the panel yesterday. When we were first doing Transformers Animated at Cartoon Network in about 2006, 2007, one of the first tasks was to do a brief test animation reel, just sort of proof of concept, with the characters that had already been designed. There were a few that had not yet been designed. And we didn't, because we weren't in production yet, we hadn't cast our wonderful voice cast, so we needed some voices for the animators to time the animation to. So we took whoever was available at the time, including yours truly, and Derek Wyatt, and Matt Youngberg, and one of our directors, Ireneo Maramba, and an actual 8-year-old girl voicing Sari, and that was my daughter Sarah. So when we showed the clip at Comic-Con to promote the show, by that point we did have the original actors. So the clip that, if anybody's seen this clip, they've heard it with the actual voice actors. But I still held on to the original with the original voice actors. And since we talked about it yesterday, we're going to show it to you.
No description in theory collapse, but it seems one of Detroit's new robot heroes doesn't quite know his own strength.
So what did so much damage to you anyway? An army? A giant mutated monster? A Decepticon?
Actually, it was that guy. The Autobot was pursuing this man, Nino Sexton, a small-time thief, now calling himself Nanosec.
Prowls just spotted Nanosec out on I-94. He's beaming over his position now. Let's put the brakes on this speeder before he, or anyone else, causes any more damage.
Sweet! I'll be right in the sky! I never get to have any fun.
Transform and roll out.
Why are they gonna make this stuff so heavy?
Word of advice, super speed doesn't equal super strength. I thought you were a kid.
I am a kid. What's going on? That's not me.
Stay.
I don't do stay. Whoa.
So who wore it better, me or David Kay? So obviously there's no music or effects or anything, and that was from the episode Nanosec, which was actually the first episode to be written. It was written before the three-part transform and rollout pilot, and that was sort of our proof of concept, typical episode. So that's what we actually had scripted at the time, and that's what we did the clip. So just so you know, that was supervising producer Matt Youngberg as the news anchor, me as Bulkhead and me as Prime, and that was my daughter Sarah as Sorry, and Derek Wyatt as Nanosec, and Arena Marama as Prowl. So like I said, my daughter was 8 years old when that clip was recorded, and today is her 21st birthday.
Congratulations!
So, can I ask a favor of you? It's the middle of the night in Los Angeles, so we're not going to call her. But if I could record you fine people singing "Happy Birthday" to Sarah.
Do we want to drop the lights a little bit, just so the camera was...
Oh, yes, so I can actually see you.
Yeah.
All right, give me a second.
Ready?
Are we ready?
1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sarah. Happy birthday to you.
Further reports on when she receives it.
Thank you for indulging me.
Right, okay, so let's talk about Transformers on paper.
Oh yeah.
Okay, spoilers for season 4 if you haven't already seen it.
I'm not allowed to divulge anything.
Thank you for coming. Where do we start? Like, okay, give us a little bit of an insight as to what direction you were thinking about as you were planning out those first 3 episodes for season 4.
Okay, so season 4 went through a few permutations. I mean, even when we were developing season 1, they always want to know, well, where's it going to go? What's going to happen? What's season 2 going to be about? What's season 3 going to be about? And I always pitched that, by around season 3, season 4, we would start to, introduce some of the Beast Wars type characters, and make it. I felt like Megatron would play himself out at some point, and we needed some fresh villains, and so I kept pushing for, let's do some form of a techno-organic war. And we already had Black Arachnia seeded in there. We eventually got Sorry seeded in there as a techno-organic character. We got Wasp into Waspinator. So it just seemed like that was the direction things were heading. And at the end of season 3, I felt like Megatron's story was complete. We defeated him, we imprisoned him. Let's take it in a new direction. But it's not entirely up to me or up to the creative team at Cartoon Network. Hasbro's paying the bills, and Hasbro has certain needs for where they want their toy line to go. And their feeling was we're not really selling Predacons, we're not selling Beast Machines toys or Beast Wars toys. So they wanted to keep it, strictly Autobots and Decepticons, and Megatron's going to be our villain, and we'll make improvements to Optimus and Megatron, and sell more Optimus and Megatron toys. So that was the first thing where they limited what we wanted to do or what I wanted to do. And then the next thing was as we had gone through season 3, and particularly the episode "This Is Why I Hate Machines," was, we had such a fascinating Cybertronian society that we established for that one episode. I felt like there's a whole season just to be had on Cybertron. So that's what I was really pushing for season 4, is let's just do the whole thing in a Cybertron that's actually populated by Autobots, and it's not currently at war. And let's see what day-to-day life is on Cybertron, and almost treat it like Springfield on The Simpsons, where we just have this huge cast of characters that can come in and do little cameos, and there's just this whole sense of daily life going on within the stories. And again, that was shot down because of the tremendous success of the Michael Bay movie, where really, I think in order for the Hasbro people to justify to their bosses any continuation of anything that wasn't based on the Michael Bay movies, it had to at least superficially resemble the Michael Bay movies. So it's like, it's got to be on Earth, and it's got to be Megatron's the bad guy, and let's make the team the same team from the Michael Bay movies. So as you can see, what we were doing in that 3-parter is we're coming up with a reason as to why the team is now Optimus, Bumblebee, Jazz, Ironhide, and Ratchet, which was that was basically the team from the movie. So we had to justify that. And they had a big ask, which is, can we redesign Optimus Prime with the flames on his legs? They even gave us a sample piece of artwork where they had the lineup, because all of those characters were designed, so they had the lineup of the team, and then a picture of Optimus with the flames on his legs. And we just all had an immediate negative reaction to that. But we thought, well, what if we do this? Just to justify, if you want to sell a toy, an animated toy with Optimus and the flames on his legs, we'll make it. We came up with the idea that it was some Cybertronian Medal of Honor or something. But he doesn't like it, and he takes it off. But he at least has them on briefly, so he can justify having the toy. So that's how that bit came to be. So a lot of what happened as far as coming up with that 3-parter, Hasbro had pitched us the idea of the prison and the mini-cons running it, and that the prison would blast off from Cybertron and end up on Earth in the middle of Lake Erie. So we just had to figure out how are we going to make that happen, and devise a story around that. And I think I already had the idea that if we were going to continue beyond season 3, that the obvious thing to do would be the trial of Megatron, which is it's a great sounding title. So let's have that play out. And then for me, it was, well, since we can't do an entire season on Cybertron, let's cram as much of everything that I wanted to get in there in those 3 episodes. And I suspect that had it gone into production, a lot of things would just have to have been cut for time. At the point that I was doing those outlines, I wasn't really thinking about that. I just figured, let's just get it all down, and then we can start hearing back, and they can start telling me, no, we can't do that, or we don't want to do that. So I suspect that if season 4 had gone into production, that what ended up on screen would have been somewhat different from what those outlines were.
So, you mentioned there about Hasbro mandating, obviously, the change to the team to be more reflective of the Michael Bay movie and things like that. But I've got an ongoing debate with a friend of mine about how heavy was that body count. Because did you just murder all of the Decepticons at the end of episode 3, with the exception of Megatron?
I have to go back and think, was the plan to come up with it? I think we wanted to really play up the mini-cons for a while.
Yeah.
I think we were going to get them back somehow.
Right.
I don't think that was going to be a permanent thing. But what we did want to do is start seeding in the idea that Megatron is losing his shit. and he's becoming much more ruthless and as his minions, and it was a sense that this is going to be a much more streamlined and much more ruthless Megatron than we had seen in the previous 3 seasons. You know, the kind of the gloves are off, and I think at this point he was getting closer to the Beast Machine's Megatron of on the road to genocide, if not entirely arrived at the point of genocide.
And that's quite reflective of Mr. Jim Sorensen is down here in the audience, and he did the Old Spark Almanac, which had a load of Season 4 artwork in, which included a revised version of what Megatron might have looked like, which had similarities to the Beast Machines. Am I right? Yes, I am. Jim's nodding. I'm good.
Well,
the face mask and things like that.
Yeah, from the toy perspective, the Hasbro said we want to do Power Master Prime, so let's work that in. And they said let's make Megatron a triple changer, and make him a real threat where he doesn't need all of these other minions. He's just on his own is a huge threat. So that's where we started coming up with a backstory for why Blitzwing, or why Blitzwing became a triple changer. Black Arachne would have been involved in that, and she would have been involved in turning Megatron into a triple changer, and like it, Blitzwing nuts, but in sort of a fun, comical way. It was going to make Megatron nuts in a completely lethal way. So.
We're going to have some microphones running around. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? I have a feeling there'll be a few hands. Yes. Right, okay. Can we just down here right at the front, Gav?
Hello.
Hello.
Since you said Megatron was becoming unstable, would it have been inevitable if he became Galvatron and by extension Unicron getting involved?
That wasn't the plan. I suppose if we had Season 5, maybe. I always found Unicron to be one of these concepts that's just so huge that it just didn't quite fit in the animated world. So I don't know if we ever would have gotten that far.
So if you wanted to end the Transformers animated in a particular way, how would you have done it?
You always want to end it, but leave room to continue it, whether it was going to continue as a series or as a comic book or something. And I think in general, you want to give it a satisfying ending, but also leave the audience wanting more. But I never really thought about, it's going to end here and in this way. Other than I think it really would have felt like it came to an end when Sari's journey came to an end. And that was still being figured out. So I know everybody has lots of questions about what Sari is and where she was going. And the answer to that is we were still figuring it out. So I'm as much in the dark as everybody else.
Who's got the mic? Well, just hand it to somebody. Oh, I've got. Right over in the corner there.
First I want to say thank you so much for giving us all this juicy content and helping us, bring some closure to a series that has been sort of really formative for my experience as a Transformers fan and an artist. I guess there's this one mystery that's been plaguing me for all these years I haven't quite been able to figure out. What was Derek Wyatt's deal with Beachcomber? Why did he like that guy?
I don't think he liked it. I mean, we all thought he was kind of a lame character. So, and he was supposed to be in the Season 3 opener. It was written and recorded, and it just got cut for time. And it's a very funny story, because basically he's the guy who catches Long Arm turning into Shockwave and realizes that he's a traitor. And of course, Beachcomber's reaction is, dude, that's not cool. And the way the scene went is Shockwave says, well, I have a very simple explanation for it. And he extends his cannon and he says, and Beachcomber says, I don't get it. And then Shockwave just blows him up. So that was actually the first casualty that we were going to put in that And he came in for the record, and he's like, "Oh yeah, so this character Beachcomber." It's like, "Oh, that'll be fun! I can't wait to do him for the rest of the season." And, well, so it was partially a joke to bring him back in, only to get him blown up. Just an inside joke.
And then, at the beginning of season 4, he's driving in space, and Blackout kills him. So you were determined to get rid of him.
Yeah,
at all costs.
he was becoming the Kenny of the. So if I had to predict that scene would have gotten cut for time, and then in the season 5 I would never get to kill
I've got a question down here.
I was enjoying the show last night, and I was sort of a lot of the time picturing in my head sort of what was going on, was imagining how it would have looked. But one thing I was struggling with, what was the idea for the visual design of the minicons? What would they have looked like? What would they have acted like? How would they have sort of moved? And
Jim, did you put some in the almanac?
Yeah, Derek designed some for the Transformers Fan Club continuation. Sorry. Yeah, Derek Wyatt designed some minicons that were used in the Stunticon job, which Marty wrote, which was a fan club continuation that we called Season 3.5. So it's between the end of the season that we saw on Friday and what we heard last night.
so they've all had sort of individual identities. It wouldn't be like a mass of clones. They all look so different.
It was still early because at the time that I wrote those outlines, we didn't have any designs. So we were still conceptualizing it, but there was an ask from Hasbro to include them, so we just wanted to make them different from the Autobots, and so what I proposed was that they don't speak in language. They use R2-D2 beeps, which coincidentally that's how they end with Bumblebee in Prime. So.
But a race of smaller characters rather than mindless army of sort of.
Yeah, I think in the sense that I don't think they were sentient necessarily. I think they were more like the Sumdac robots in Detroit in the earlier seasons. That they weren't really. They probably look like R2-D2. They would exhibit some personality, but they would be lower on the evolutionary scale.
The Sumdac robot comparison really helps. Thank you.
I've got a question over here. Yep. Just hand the microphones.
It's not my usual job. Since they were like the new members of the team, were there any plans to give further development or character-focused episodes to Jazz and Ironhide?
Yes, there were, but I can't recall what they were specifically.
Okay. I'm hoping I'm getting this right. During season 4, there was a concept for a Shattered Glass episode, and I was wondering, obviously, in that universe, Autobots were evil and Decepticons are good. From your take, what sort of personalities would some of these characters have exhibited, seeing as how they would have been the mirrored version of other characters?
That was actually something we were going to do in season 3. And it got cut because we rejiggered the opening of season 3 to be the movie. So the movie, we stitched together the first 3 episodes, and then, because Three's a Crowd was going to be one of the first 3 episodes, so we only took a little chunk out of Three's a Crowd, but we put in an episode's worth of additional material, and that took up the space, the slot that would have been Shattered Glass in season 3. Because that was the easiest one to pull out, because that was kind of a standalone. So I don't know that we had given it much thought. We knew we wanted to do it, and when we got to it, we would get to the specifics of it. I'm pretty sure Derek had done some sketches, which again may have ended up in the almanac.
They did.
So generally the answer to most of your questions about what would have happened is look at the almanac. Because those were all pretty much designed by Derek. So and Derek was our art director. So what Derek drew was what we did. Over here.
I heard that Slipstream was going to give her own band of Decepticons in season 4. Any hints on who they could have been?
I don't remember. Short and sweet. Over here?
Hi. I was just curious, in most versions of Transformers, Optimus Prime was always the leader of the Autobots, the biggest and the best. Who actually came up with the idea for him to be the character he was at the beginning of season 1, and how was it received initially?
That was my idea, because I was handed some initial development before I came on board. So most of the actual setup for the series had been figured out by Sam Register and Trent Winslow at Cartoon Network. And they hired another writer to do development on it, and they weren't entirely satisfied with it. And so I looked at it, and I jiggered and clarified a few things in the story, but I didn't change that much. But when it came to the characters, every description of every Autobot was, they're iconic, they're godlike, there was just nothing that I could, as a writer, really wrap my head around. And I just thought, if I'm going to be writing, 13, 26 half hours, I have to have characters that I'm interested in. So I'm much more interested in someone who's an underdog, someone who has something to prove. So if someone is the leader of all the Autobots and the wise and experienced hero, there's nowhere for him to go. So I said, let's bring him down a few pegs. Let's make him someone with something to prove. And he's a young leader, and he has a commander that he's beholden to, and he has a rival that dismisses him, and there's just more to play with there. I think also some of it was that my experience when the Transformers universe, really my introduction to it was Beast Wars and Beast Machines. I hadn't seen a lot of the original G1, so to me, the Optimus in Beast Wars is a lower level commander. He's not the leader of the entire Maximal race. So that's where he was always oriented for me.
Yeah, just on here.
Hi. It's kind of like, it kind of already answered it in a weird way, but it's about Blitzwing. You kind of like already killed him off though. But like, would you ever like, was it like, how do you explain it? Was it always one person, or is it being like 3 different people before it became a triple changer? Because like, it kind of seems like he's 3 different people, but like, was it like the personality got split up, or is it like 3 people like smashed together?
Well, the origin of Blitzwing as a character, because I didn't have the background of the G1, so I didn't know who was who. So I always would rely on Derek. I'd say, I need a character who's like this, who does this, and he would say, oh, this character would be great. So as I was doing the original development for the series, I thought, wouldn't it be fun if there was a Decepticon who could literally turn into anything? And play him, because the first show that I ever wrote was Beetlejuice, and the fun thing about Beetlejuice is he could literally turn into anything. And it would usually be a bad pun where he would just turn into whatever literally he was saying. So I thought that would be, sort of a wild and crazy Joker kind of character. That would be something different, something we've never seen. And Hasbro, their immediate reaction was, how do we make a toy out of that? It is impossible. So Derek kind of came to the rescue and said, well, we can't do that, but what if we made him a triple changer? What's a triple changer? And he explained it turns into 2 different vehicles. And I said, oh, well, maybe he could have 3 different personalities as well. Because I just written a character on Ninja Turtles called, I think, Triple Threat, who was this 3-headed character. And I also love the 3-headed knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So I love these, sort of 3 personalities that don't get along. So I thought that would be fun to write, as if he's constantly switching, back and forth between these 3 different personalities. And I think Derek in the design was inspired by a He-Man character called Manny Faces or something like that. So it was a team effort in just the creation of him as a character. And that as far as his origin story, we were going to figure that out in season 4, and other than Black Arachne was somehow involved in the creation of that, we didn't get much further in the specifics.
We've got a question over at the back there.
Hi there. Oh,
Hello.
there was a... So you literally just mentioned about getting advice from Derek for what a particular character that might fit a role, a legacy character. In last night's screening, the Uplink and Tractor. Uplink was a pre-existing name from, I think, before Fun Hub, the other one that. The 3H, yeah. But would Tractor have also been someone you might have gone to Derek for if that had been greenlit to replace with someone else, or would you have stuck with?
Well, we weren't aware of, and certainly Derek wasn't aware of Uplink from there, because I said, is there anyone in the existing canon that could play this role? I just need someone who's a reporter. And he said, nobody that he knew of, so he said, let's just make something up. Tractor was just a running joke that we had. So wouldn't it be funny if we had a transformer who was, a farmer who turned into a tractor? So when it came to develop this story, I realized some of it was going to take place on the Energon farm. So I said, Derek, we're going to use Tractor. Hasbro will tell us not to, but we're going to start by saying we're using it.
I've got a question over here.
Hi. I was wondering if, as a means of continuing the series, if you've considered doing a comic book with IDW. I know it won't be entirely up to you, but is that something you've pitched or something you've said, if there's a lot of interest, you might be doing it, or is that any sort of possibility?
Well, it's not up to me at all. It's up to IDW. If they want to do it, I'd be happy to write it. And a number of people come up to me during the signings, and I say that the likelihood of getting another season of animation is slim to none, just because of the investment involved and the expense of doing a season of animation. But if there's an audience out there that would like to see it continue and wants to put their efforts into petitioning and campaigning, I'd say put your efforts toward IDW, because it's a much smaller investment to do a comic book, and if they see X number of names saying we want to see this, then they realize, well, that's X number of copies that we can sell. So I don't get to decide these things, but I have said publicly and will always say that if such a thing does come to pass, I would make the time to write it.
We've got a question over here.
Hi, Marty. First off, I just wanted to say thank you very much. Transformers Animated was, I think, was really sort of reignited my passion for Transformers back in 2007. So, I just firstly wanted to say thank you. My question, I suppose... Could
you wave? Because I can't see.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi. So, my question, I suppose, you touched on earlier about how, obviously, in the Season 4 first 3 episodes, we were going to get rid of Blitzwing and all those characters thrown into that, and John Pitt and Megatron was kind of going to be the main focus of the enemy. You had obviously set up in Season 3 Team Char, and they appeared at the beginning of Season 4 as well, having Blackout killing Beachcomber and then Sari killing off Spithor and whatnot. Were they just going to continue to be sort of recurring guest stars because it felt like they were a really powerful Decepticon force, which then doesn't, for me, kind of, it felt like they could have been exploited more, and that doesn't really sit with Megatron being that kind of main force just going at it on his own?
There weren't specific plans, but I think that it was inevitable that we would have used them more because they're a good threat. So sometimes you're writing a story and you got your Autobot character story, but you don't necessarily know what your Decepticon threat is. So odds are in a story meeting we would have said, well, what's Team Char doing? Well, maybe they can come in and create some trouble, and then we have some jeopardy and some action, to fill in the action story. So I don't think we had any stories that were built around them, but I'm sure they would come back.
Can I just throw in a little bit of a random story here for you? So you'll remember this because I had a panic attack like one morning. So we're working on this, obviously in secret, and I'm messaging Marty backwards and forwards constantly. I'm sorry. So on stage and I'm just like, right, we'll get this done and all of that stuff. And obviously we know about Team Char, we've seen them before, led by Stryker. And I sent the art off, and did anybody else notice who showed up in the episode last night? Obsidian. Who's never showed up in animated before. And it wasn't until about 4 weeks later that I realised this. And I'm like, Obsidian's in here? And you're just like, I must have got it wrong, it must have been Stryker. I'm like, no, Stryker's off doing something else. And then had a massive panic. I didn't have a panic. Andrew Turnbull had a massive panic when he had to design an entirely new lineup of Decepticons to invent this base, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. But yes, so there you go, there was another character who appeared in season 4 that you did get to see last night. So, which I completely forgot all about. There you go. Yeah, down here.
Hi. Sorry. There was any possibility to Blur to come back?
We didn't, I didn't intend to, but I know that he was a fan favorite, and from our perspective, he was gone and dead. However, there was a convention a few years back where John Machito, the voice of Blur, and Sue Blue were special guests, and I was asked to write a story that revives Blur. And then they would read it live. It was sort of like an illustrated children's book. So it's done very simply. So I believe there's still the video of them performing that with the artwork. So if you need Blur to be alive, Google it or look it up on YouTube, and there is a story which, from my perspective, yes, it's canon, sure, it happened. Then that story exists.
Just over here.
In season 3, when we find out that Optimus is no longer part of the elite guard because, reasons, Sentinel Prime, joke back. Anyway, when he's given the command of the ship, that's really Omega 3. Sorry. Yeah, long night. Does Ultra Magnus know? Or has Ratchet just run off with a decommissioned weapon of mass destruction, hoping nobody notices?
I think that's a very good question. I don't know that we had considered the answer to it, but I suspect that it was the latter. Because you'll notice that post-Great War, the Autobots were very inefficient.
Yeah, over here.
Hi, thanks very much for the season 4 reading last night. Fantastic fun. One thing to follow up on an earlier question. So you mentioned that the Decepticon Team Char would have been coming back in season 4. Would we have also seen more of the members of the Autobot transport Team Athenia? Because Rodimus was there with the Elite Guard, Ironhide coming in, Red Alert made a cameo. Would it be a sort of similar thing as well, where they'd be recurring in the background and getting a bit more time as well?
Yes, is the short answer. Once the character was designed, and for the most part they were voiced by our core cast, so it was pretty easy to bring them in and give them a couple line cameo. So that was part of the fun as we got from season to season, and we expanded our cast of Autobots to the point where there was a big wall at our offices at Cartoon Network where every character was there, the design sheets of every character, just to remind us who's out there, who we could use. So part of what's going on in that three-parter was let's use everybody, or most everybody that we have designed, and I think because the animation came out so well on that battle that opened season 3, there was really a big desire on everybody's part to bring those characters back, and we got just this tiny little sliver of who they were, and it clearly intrigued the audience, but it also intrigued us. It's like, well, what more can we learn about these characters? So yeah, I think they would come back.
Question right over in the far corner there.
Hi. Throughout the series, it said all Autobots are not to fly until the introduction of Jetfire and Jetstone. Were there plans after their introduction to introduce the likes of Power Glide or the aerial bots?
There were no plans to do that.
Over here.
One of the things that was most unique about animated was its use of human supervillains for a lot of episodes in the early seasons especially. Were there any intent for season 4 to go back to that well, or with the escalation of the scope and the size of the robot cast, would that have fallen off?
Well, I think we saw that already happening in season 3. I think because we were back on Earth, there may have been a little bit of an attempt to bring back some of those Earth-based characters, but it seems like once we got into season 3 that we just had so much more story to tell, and we had more invested at that point in the Autobot-Decepticon conflict that inevitably those human villains fell by the wayside.
Just as a follow-up on that, given obviously the fact that Hasbro's main goal is to sell toys, did you ever find that there was any pushback given how much you used the human villains in season 1?
Not really from Hasbro's perspective, because I think they were pretty open to trying something different. Because just to give it a little perspective, the origins of this series being done the way it was done was that the 3 series, which are all, I guess, interrelated, that immediately preceded it, what's affectionately known as the Unicron trilogy, I think, were very successful in terms of selling toys, but were very unsuccessful in terms of drawing ratings for the entertainment. And the way that it worked between Hasbro and Cartoon Network is they would guarantee a good time slot for the first run of the episodes, but if they were not getting a high enough rating in terms of the audience, then it would be banished to like a 6 in the morning time slot, which on the West Coast means that it would air at 3 in the morning, so no one would see these shows. So Sam Register, who is a producer at Cartoon Network, largely responsible for Ben 10, proposed that Hasbro do. It wasn't entirely an American production because the storyboards were still done overseas, but the content was American and would have been done through Cartoon, and was done through Cartoon Network Studios. And basically his pitch to Hasbro is, let's do it our way. And we can't guarantee, but we can give you a better shot at getting good ratings and keeping your entertainment in a good time slot, and maybe selling some toys by doing it differently. So he was really the one who was hounding him and said, let's do this like it's a cartoon. Let's not do it like it's a toy commercial. And Hasbro, in terms of the designers, really stepped up. And I think what they were able to do with the toys in terms of resembling this more, squash and stretch animated look was nothing short of a miracle. So I totally lost the thread of what the original question was.
That's all right. It's fine. We've got too many hands up anyway. Yeah.
Hello there. There's a recurring theme about you thinking of
character and then trying to having Derek come up with the Transformers from the past to fit that description. What I want to ask is about an adult kid who didn't really have any like cartoon representations or that many representations in the past or completely original, but taken those names into a life of their own. So my question is, what's the character creation process for those two?
I believe that they were certainly part of the development that I was handed, so I believe they were characters that Hasbro had developed on their own, because they obviously with any new toy line they want to get in some new characters and freshen the brand. I know that Bulkhead was the first character that Derek designed. Like, he had a real feel for this kind of gentle giant character. You could really see the passion and the love, and even those very first designs. So one of the first sketches, I don't know if it ended up in the almanac, but one of the first sketches that Derek drew was Bulkhead, I think, looking at some small animals or something. Did that end up in the almanac? It did. Okay. So get the almanac is really the short answer. All of these things. So, but yeah, Hasbro, I think, had developed the basic ideas. They wanted a bounty hunter. I think, wasn't there a Marvel-specific character that was a bounty hunter, or was like Lockdown, but Hasbro didn't own? So
Death's Head.
Death's Head, yeah, there we go. So I think they wanted a Death's Head that they could own. I think that was the motivation behind Lockdown. Then a lot of the specifics about what those characters would look like was really a lot of back and forth between the art team at Cartoon Network and the art team at Hasbro. And that was one of the brilliant things that Sam Register did, was he said, we're going to bring the toy designers out to Burbank. You know, they're all based in Rhode Island, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And they're just going to spend a week hanging out with you guys in the studio and just, we're going to have a mind meld. And I think because of that, because we spent a lot of time with Eric Siebenauer in particular, I think the synergy between the toys and the cartoon were stronger for it, and I think the product shows.
Right, okay, I'm afraid unfortunately this is going to have to be our last question because we're rapidly running out of time.
I nearly didn't ask that question, but then I'm here. I nearly didn't ask that question, but then you mentioned Blur's death and the fact that it's actually more canon for him to be dead. So that leaves me. Okay, so Blur's dead. Ultra Magnus died in the very beginning of season 3, and we know from the almanacs that Shockwave as Longarm killed his former boss. So that makes 3 body counts for sure. And so the question is, how high actually is the body count for Shockwave?
I don't think I'm at liberty to say. I would imagine it's pretty high. I think anybody who got close to, he managed to stay undercover for a long, long time. So one would assume that anybody who got close probably met a similar end. But just, in general, there was a big jump from season 2 to season 3, and a mandate from Cartoon Network in particular that they wanted to age up the show because they were aging up Ben 10 and they were getting Clone Wars, and this cute little show about a little girl and her robots wasn't quite going to mesh with the new version of Ben 10 and the Clone Wars. So we had to quickly come up with a reason why Sorry went from an 8-year-old to a 16-year-old, and we started season 3 with a pretty knockdown, drag-out battle, and Autobots are getting injured. The equivalent of poison gas is being used, and it was we were really making the statement that this is going to be a more hard-hitting version of the same show, but we're still trying to keep the same level of comedy and character.
One last one. Come on, Jim.
It's not a question so much as the almanac has been brought up several times. If anyone wants to take a look, I have one at my table, and I'll be there at 3 o'clock, right after a panel with Marty at 2. So
there we go.
And
come by, take a look.
If you love animated, you owe yourself the pleasure of the almanac. It was truly a labor of love on Jim and Bill's part, and just the amount of detail. They really got deep into the weeds in the animated universe, and it's kind of the lasting document of that universe. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
And if on Friday you felt pain at the quiz, just know that the almanac gave Chris McFeely such a headache. Okay, that does it. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but Marty will be about, so if you do have any other questions, by all means, pop by his desk and say hello.
It's nominally a Beast Machines panel, but you can ask him.
Yeah, I will. A big round of applause.